Welcome back to season 2 of Untamed Social. We're thrilled to be back for another season. I'm Rachel Strella, and I'm excited to welcome a new face this time around, Tyson Payne. Hello.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Tyson is a marketing consultant who joined our team at the end of last year, so welcome. We're just going to jump right into today's topic, which is about authenticity on social media. And this is such a great topic this year because it actually aligns with our marketing theme as a company. So let's just go ahead and explore this topic a little bit. What does it actually mean to be authentic online? What do you think, Tyson?
So, I think that a lot of people think about authenticity as uh, if you're willing to share everything, but I think it's more about your intention behind what you're sharing.
Hmm.
So, are you sharing because you're trying to curate a persona or build some perfection, or
Right.
are you sharing because you really want to connect with other people and you really want to let people into your world a little bit or let yourself into their world? Then that will come across as authentic. So I don't think it's a matter of putting all of yourself out there all the time. I think it's a matter of being intentional about putting yourself out there.
I love the word intentional. I love that. That's like the word of the year. I love it. I love it. I agree with that. I really think it's about presenting your true self, like whatever you value, you believe, your personality. It's putting yourself out there without trying to be something that you're not. I kind of like think about it as the humble brag, those people who are like, I am so honored to, um, and you can just tell it's fake. It's not real.
Right.
So, well, now that we've defined it, let's talk about like why does it matter? And for me, I just think that it's being real and relatable to your audience, or to whomever. Like it just builds trust and stronger connections online and you're yourself. People know when you're being fake and nobody wants to see it. Nobody cares to see it.
Sure. And I think, I mean, in marketing speak, right? It's
Yeah.
also about engagement, like trust leads to engagement. And even if you're talking about your personal brand, like the Rachel Strella Facebook audience, the reason why you're on social media is to socialize and to
Right.
engage with other people and to reach out. And so, if that's the metric that you're looking to move into your life is some engagement with others, then authenticity is going to be what drives that. So,
It's funny you see engagement. It's like that metric is so interesting to me. I I may not have any engagement on a post. I mean, I might get people that like it, but they may never comment. There's just too many lurkers out there. They but you might get that one person who might email you or message you that says it resonates with them, and that could mean so much more than having 100 comments on it.
for
Knowing that
real.
you've impacted one person with your post because you were real.
Sure. Or like the magical unicorn moment where you're out in the world and you run into someone who you've
Yes.
loved on social media and you have an actual connection that you've built because you've been pushing like on their kids' soccer videos for
Yes.
5 years and you see each other at the grocery store and it's that moment. And I think it's the same. Engagement means the same
Yes.
when we're talking about business, right? When I run across a brand that I just have built that love and trust in, then it's not the same as finding a friend, but it has a similar feeling of
Absolutely.
being engaged.
And that's
So,
when it comes full circle, and it's great.
mhm.
So, speaking of authenticity, I want to share a real quick story. A friend of mine, who's also my co host on the Light Her Project podcast, she told me recently she could never be raw on social media. And she said this after reading my blog post from last weekend. And I asked her why. And she said, I don't believe people need to know details about me. And she went on to say that she feels too many people overshare online and it's too much. Granted, I get what she's saying, but it got me thinking. Is this belief? shared by most people. And so I decided to poll people and find out, you know, let's talk about this. Let's dive deeper. So let's just talk about the questions that we asked people and what they had to say. So the first question that was asked is on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being the most comfortable. How comfortable are you with sharing details about your business or your life on social media? And the numbers were all over the place. You know, we had a 1, we had a 2, we had a 3, and we had 6, 7, 8. You know, we had them all over. The average was a 5.46. So it really spanned all over. But one question we asked is, do you feel comfortable being authentic on social media? And feel free to elaborate on what that means to you. And we had a lot of different responses there. One thing I want to first mention is that somebody said, not really. I've always taken a neutral stance on politics. Um, when we're talking about something like this, we're not talking about politics. Those kinds of things can be really polarizing, and I tend to not include them on things when I'm talking about being authentic. We're talking about sharing your own personal beliefs and values, and while politics can be included in that because they're so polarizing, we're not really talking about that kind of thing here. But as far as some of the other responses, I highlighted a couple here. One said, I used to be until I was hacked and my business was destroyed. I hardly post about my life on social media. So I'm going to say this is one person that is the exception to the rule. um, I would also say I would feel very uncomfortable putting things about my life out there when you have a cybersecurity breach. So she gets a pass. And I take cybersecurity very seriously, so I understand in that case. All right, so for the rest of the world, you know, let's talk about
Everyone else.
it. There was one response that really stuck out for me. She said, for years I prided myself on being very authentic in my business and on social media, especially. People really knew who I was and what I stood for, which I felt was a great asset. However, there seems to be so much negativity lately that I'm more cautious. People used to try and vote others up and share in their successes and wins, both personally and professionally. But work needs to be done to get back to that. A good goal for 2025. Oof. What do you think about that?
I think I think that being authentic and especially like living in an authentic way, and you'll hear other words for it. There are things like simplify your life or reprioritize. And to me, I think people are just saying dial in with what's authentic to them, right? And you hear it everywhere. It's the hugest thing for 2025, right?
Yeah.
And I think overall the responses to your survey here, anyone who's saying like I don't put myself out there, um, they're coming from a place of fear that they're afraid of what the rejection will be, afraid of what the exposure will be. And I hate to think that like we're discouraging relationships as a society because of fear of like a bully, and we're all in our 40s on Facebook, like um, and I think we had like a pendulum swing. Like social media came out and everyone loved the surge of information that you could get, and they loved the surge of connection that you could get. But they also learned that there's not a lot of consequences to just saying whatever you want. And the pendulum swung over here. And I think it's swinging back because we're demanding as an audience now kindness, and we're demanding authenticity, and we're demanding that you still act like a decent human, or people will get you. Like there was a time when if someone commented negatively on my post, it was crickets, because you didn't know what to do about that. But you just try it now. Like my girlfriends will eat you alive. And so I think the pendulum is swinging back, to where as a society we're evening out a little more. We're getting a little more used to this access to each other and learning how to be kinder to each other. And I hope that that's going to make space for this authenticity
Yeah.
in
You know,
those channels.
you bring up such a great point. I'm still traumatized by some things that I've posted. I've had these random people attack me. And I'm like, where did that come from? This was either something that was supposed to be funny or lighthearted, and they will take it to a whole nother level. I'm like, where did that come from? And you're right. And it's funny when you have people in your community come to your defense, and you're like, go ahead, go there, buddy. I dare you. you
Get
know,
them, girls.
that's the other side of social media. But the negativity can get really, really overkill. And people are afraid. And it's sad because that's not, there's no place for it. There's no need for it.
Yeah.
But I don't truly feel that fear is the reason for everybody. I just feel like some people that it just let's talk about that. I'm gonna skip to this question here because there's something on for later. Do we think it's a generational thing?
I mean, I think I think it is. I think certainly the different generations handle this problem or this opportunity, however you think of it differently. My teenage daughters, they have so much access to everyone and everything all the time. They're much smarter than me, and they're much more emotionally intelligent than me, and they've learned a lot of things. But I also feel like um, they've learned to chase the reaction of others. They've learned to chase that superficial interaction. And I know they're still immature and they'll learn what an authentic reaction and what an authentic interaction is. But as they're learning to sort of chase that, they also are carrying a lot more stress, I think, than we carried as children because it was a lot simpler, which again I think is another word for authentic to just interact in person.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it's a generational issue in terms of like if we're being nice to each other or not, but I think in terms of whether or not we feel the pinch of social media and the stress of it, I think certainly it is. Yeah.
I wonder, when it comes to sharing, if like generational, if we feel okay. So for example, my dad will be like, "I can't believe you're sharing all that stuff on social media." And I get it. My dad is like almost 70s, but he doesn't want to see that. He's like, can't maybe put all this stuff on social media. For him, he doesn't understand it, but he respects it. He understands why I do it. He understands that for me, he would just never do it. Um, but I think there's just a different perception there. I mean, for most of my adult life, I've grown up with social media, so I think it's if there, but people just have different values, different things they bring to the table about how they share. And I think for people like your teenage daughters, they've had social media their entire life.
Yeah. And they've learned that there's some curation there. Yeah.
Yes.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think too, when we come back to like marketing terms, right, and we're talking about like the quality of likes or the quality of leads that you're getting or the quality of interactions that you're getting, and whether or not those lead to retention, right? So
Yeah.
a real engaged audience leads to retention. And I think that's what I'm trying to teach my girls. And I'm sure what you're trying to institute into your own accounts is that if we can reach that level of if we can curate an authenticity instead of a sense of perfection, then the result is going to be a lot higher quality relationships and a lot higher
Right.
quality connections. And that opportunity is certainly there too. And I do think the younger generation has a better grasp on curating some authentic connection. So,
I do agree with you there. I absolutely agree with you. Well, going back to the survey, one question that I asked is, do you believe vulnerability builds trust? I have a lot of mixed responses, but I really liked one. And I believe whoever said this is in the leadership space or maybe in management or leadership. They said yes. If you read five dysfunctions of a team based on the pyramid, vulnerability based trust. So uh, I'm happy to read that because you may not see it right away, but when you think about it and you break it down, when you're vulnerable, it kind of gives you a feeling for other people that it makes you a little relatable. When you're vulnerable, other people in the room are like, they immediately will kind of want to understand and they want to help you. And that kind of builds a relationship immediately. And I know I've had so many people that have come to build that relationship with me because they're like, man, I felt that same way, or I've been in that same situation, and I'm glad that you talked about it. They might have not felt comfortable talking about it, or maybe they have, but either way, they were glad that I talked about it, and then together we were able to come up with some sort of solution or whatever it is, bond about it. It built that relationship, and that helped establish trust. And so, as you're thinking about the wise old words of like know like trust, I feel like that vulnerability piece is somewhere fundamental within that.
Definitely fueling that, right? And I think it's sort of like a feedback circle. So if I give a little bit of myself out there, and
Yeah.
I'm like, Rachel, do you think I'm weird that I use eggnog as creamer in my tea? Something
Yes.
unimportant, right? And then you say, I love eggnog. Then we have a little trust about tea at least. But you can apply that on like a grander scale. So every time someone is willing to be a little bit open and then they're received with love, then they get trust built
Yes.
and then back around, and then they can be more open and then back around you go. And so I think that's the fuel for trust to keep entering back into that cycle that keeps us engaged with each other is authenticity. So
Absolutely.
vulnerability.
It can be a scary word for a lot of
Oh yeah.
people. And I think the reason for that is there's a fear that if you're vulnerable, you'll lack credibility.
Mm,
I feel, I wrote my post this weekend that, I've had kind of a crappy go of it lately, and that can happen. I've been doing this thing for 15 years, and sometimes you get disenfranchised, especially in marketing. It is not for everybody. It can be difficult. It can be hard. The waves knock you over. I write about that. Anybody who has worked in marketing can relate. Again, relatable. Some people on the outside, they might be like, "Man, you're just whining." you know, get
sure.
over and get out of this business. Um, but so for people that don't want to be vulnerable, they might just think, "Oh man, you're not. I'm afraid I'm going to not be seen as credible or not know what I'm talking about." And I understand that factor. But I kind of look at it like everybody has those days, so why not just be human?
Yeah. I think you're kind of hitting a nail on the head here too, in terms of like, do you care that some people wouldn't like your blog post or think it was over the top? And you talked about me before you talked to me before you posted the blog post, and you
Yes.
said, "Do you think this is too much?" And I said, "No, I think it's great." And you said, "I don't care if it's too much." And off it goes, right? Because you know that the marketing professionals that you hope to engage with anyway, they're going to like that message. And the people who didn't get it and thought it was too much, they're not our audience. Um, and again, the same goes for social media. Like you get to a certain level of self confidence as we get older, and we're just like, I don't care if like random girl who I met in line at the grocery store once likes this post. I really like this one's for my mom, and her friends or whatever. So I think that's part of authenticity is earlier when I was saying, are you curating a sense of perfection or are you curating a sense of connection? And I think that that comes back to that. Like, do I care if every person in the world likes me? I do not. Do
Yeah.
I care if my audience got a piece of the real me? I do. And that's why I'm on social media.
I love that very much. I do.
So,
And I'm looking at it in the lens of like my potential customer or current customer may be reading this, but if they don't align with what I'm saying or they can't understand what I'm saying, they may not be the right customer for me.
yeah,
No. All right,
and that's fine.
right?
Yeah.
Before we end, one tip maybe for how we can show up more authentically online.
You want me to go first or do you want to go
You go
first?
first.
Um, so I think it's a matter of self awareness, right? So I think you can be more authentic online if you're willing to sort of check yourself and check those intentions.
Hmm.
Um, and it's a muscle that you flex, and it becomes more natural to say like, is what I'm like, am I posting the picture where I'm sucking in, or am I posting the one where my smile really was really good? And those kinds of questions that you start to ask yourself, and then your content becomes more authentic. But it takes some bravery to do that, and it takes some self-awareness. So I think, and the same for business strategy, right? Are you willing to to check yourself? Are you willing to stick to your company's values? Are you willing to ask yourself those hard questions? And then pretty soon things are up and running and going in an authentic direction.
I love that. I think for me, I would say just tell a story. Tell a story about whatever it is that you're going through, and you will show up authentic.
I agree with you that storytelling is a top inroad to authenticity, and I think being a good storyteller, though, unfortunately, not everyone is good at that, and that doesn't come naturally to everyone. So you're lucky that you're such a good and easy storyteller and can convey your authenticity, you know, organically like that. I think that's something not everyone has the skill for. So
Thank you. Well, thanks everybody for tuning in to the Untamed Social Podcast. Check out the next episode, which will feature another fresh face, Tara K, and we'll also have Lainey back. So again, thanks everybody, and thank you, Tyson, for joining us today. We will see you next time.
sure, see you.